We built the company together. We dreamed together. But when it grew successful, my best friend tried to steal it all. And that's when the real fight began. When I look back now, it's almost laughable how naive I was, how much faith I put in friendship. Back then, it was just me and Ryan, two dreamers with more ambition than money. We met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions, and endless conversations about what we wanted out of life. While everyone else partied, we sat in cheap diners, sketching ideas on napkins, convinced that one day we'd build something big. For me, it wasn't just about money. I wanted freedom. I wanted to prove that a girl from a small town with no family connections and no silver spoon could build her own empire. For Ryan, it was about power. I didn't see that at first, of course. Back then, I thought he was just as passionate, just as hungry as I was, but for the same reasons. We started small, really small. My tiny apartment became our first office. My dining table turned into a desk, stacks of papers, and a secondhand laptop balancing precariously on top. I picked up freelance gigs just to pay rent while we poured every spare hour into our idea. Ryan brought the charm. He was always good at talking people into believing in him. I brought the grind. Late nights, spreadsheets, strategy plans. Somehow the balance worked. We landed our first investor 2 years later. I'll never forget that day. The way Ryan hugged me, lifting me off the ground, both of us laughing until our stomachs hurt. It felt like everything we dreamed of was finally happening. The company grew quickly. What started as an online platform in my apartment became an office full of buzzing energy. Interns, phones ringing, whiteboards filled with ideas. We worked side by side, Ryan and I signing contracts, pitching to clients, hiring staff. People looked at us as a power duo, unstoppable. And I believed it. I didn't notice the little cracks forming. The way Ryan sometimes dismissed my ideas in meetings, only to rephrase them as his own minutes later. The way he positioned himself as the face of the company, while I became the quiet backbone. No one outside the office seemed to know. At first, I brushed it off. What did it matter who got the credit as long as the company thrived? We were partners after all. We had the same dream. Or so I thought. What I didn't know then was that Ryan had already begun planning. That while I was burning myself out making sure everything ran smoothly, he was whispering to investors, laying seeds of doubt about me and imagining what the empire might look like without me. But that revelation would come later. In those early days, I still believed in him. I still believed in us. And I had no idea that the very person I trusted most would one day try to erase me from the story I'd worked so hard to write. Would you trust your best friend to go into business with you? Or would you keep friendship and money separate? The first time I felt something was off with Ryan, it was so small that I almost ignored it. We were at a networking dinner, the kind where everyone wears their best suit, sips overpriced wine, and pretends to be more important than they are. A potential client asked about the company's origins, curious how we'd managed to grow so quickly. I opened my mouth to answer, but Ryan jumped in first. She had some good ideas, he said, patting my hand like I was his assistant. But I had the vision. I built the strategy, the roadmap, the investor relationships. She just kept us organized. The table laughed politely, nodding as if they understood. My face burned. Organized? I was the one who had drafted our first pitch deck, run the numbers, kept us alive when Ryan's vision almost bankrupted us. Without me, there wouldn't be a company. But I smiled. I told myself it didn't matter. Let him take the spotlight, I thought. If it helps us close the deal, then fine. I've never been one for ego anyway. Still, it stung. And then little by little, the pattern repeated. Meetings where Ryan forgot to mention my contributions. Interviews where I was conveniently absent. Photo shoots where I was cropped out or pushed to the side. Soon the public began to see him as the genius founder and me as, what, a sidekick? An assistant? The staff still respected me. They knew who made the real decisions. But Ryan had charisma, and charisma is dangerous. He could spin a story and people would eat it up. Investors especially loved him. I kept working, head down, convincing myself it was just temporary. The truth always wins, I whispered at night when exhaustion made me doubt myself. But then came the first real betrayal. We were in the middle of negotiating a huge contract, the kind of deal that would put us on the map globally. I had spent weeks perfecting the proposal, running through every possible risk and solution. I walked into that boardroom ready to present. But when the projector clicked on, it wasn't my presentation. It was Ryan's. He had taken my slides, stripped my name off, and presented them as his own. The clients ate it up. They signed with us that day. Ryan walked out grinning, slapping me on the back like we'd both won. But I didn't feel like I'd won. That night, sitting in the office long after everyone else left, I realized something. Ryan didn't see me as his partner anymore. He saw me as leverage, someone to do the heavy lifting so he could stand on the stage. And if he could steal credit that easily, what else was he planning to take? Would you confront Ryan right away for stealing your credit, or wait and watch to see what he does next? After the boardroom betrayal, I tried to tell myself it was a one-time thing. Maybe Ryan was caught up in the moment. Maybe he didn't mean to erase me, but deep down, I knew better. The silence between us started to change. Before, we used to brainstorm over late-night takeout, scribbling ideas on napkins, laughing until we were too tired to move. Now Ryan kept his laptop angled away from me. He took calls in hushed tones, shutting the office door, something he never used to do. The trust that once felt unshakable was splintering, piece by piece. One morning I walked into the office early, craving the quiet before chaos. The receptionist looked startled to see me. Ryan's already here, she stammered. He's with the investors. Investors? Without me? I peeked into the conference room. There he was, sitting tall, my financial projections on the screen. He was presenting them as if they were his. I wanted to storm in, to shout the truth. But instead, I stood frozen in the hallway, heart pounding. If I exposed him right then, I'd look emotional, jealous, maybe even unstable. Investors don't always see the quiet worker. They see the one who sells the dream. And Ryan? He was selling my dream, wearing it like it was his suit. Later that day, I confronted him. "You cut me out of the meeting," I said, keeping my voice steady. Ryan didn't flinch. He just leaned back in his chair, that easy grin spreading across his face. "Relax. It was nothing big. I didn't want to bother you with the details." "Details?" My voice sharpened. "Ryan, those were my numbers, my models. You can't—" "Look," he interrupted, raising his hands as if I were being unreasonable. "We're a team, right? What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. Investors want confidence. One voice. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it." That phrase stuck in my mind like a thorn. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more changes. Important emails forgotten to be forwarded to me. Clients praising Ryan for strategies I'd written. Even employees started coming to him first, assuming he was the sole decision maker. I wasn't just being sidelined. I was being erased. The final straw came during a quarterly review with the board. Ryan stood at the head of the table, presenting a new expansion strategy. Except, it wasn't new. It was mine. The same plan I had stayed up nights perfecting, and when the applause came, he didn't even glance at me. That night, alone in my office, I realized the undercurrent wasn't silent anymore. It was roaring. Ryan wasn't just ambitious, he was dangerous. He wanted control. And if I didn't act soon, I wouldn't just lose credit. I'd lose everything. If your best friend started cutting you out of your own company, would you call them out publicly or plan quietly for your next move? I used to believe that friendships were unbreakable if built on loyalty. But sitting across from Ryan in that sleek, glass-walled office, I realized loyalty meant nothing to him. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal. For days, I tried to convince myself to have an honest conversation, to remind him of how far we'd come together, from two broke dreamers with a laptop and a rented desk to leading a company that people respected. But every time I opened my mouth, the words turned to ash. Because how do you remind someone of loyalty when they've already sold it off? The first confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening. The office was nearly empty, most employees already gone. I caught Ryan alone in the conference room reviewing a contract. "Why didn't you tell me about the investor meeting last week?" I asked, stepping inside. Ryan glanced up unfazed. "Because it wasn't relevant." "Not relevant?" I moved closer, my hands trembling but firm. "They were our investors, Ryan. You used my projections, my strategy. Don't you think I had the right to be in that room?" He leaned back in his chair, a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You're too sensitive. This isn't about rights, it's about perception. Investors want confidence, not two voices competing. You should be thanking me for keeping things smooth." "Smooth?" My voice cracked. "You're cutting me out of the company I built. You're making it look like this was all yours?" His smirk hardened into something colder. "Maybe it was always more mine than yours." The words hit me like a slap. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the overhead lights. I stared at him, searching for the friend I once knew, the guy who stayed up all night coding with me, who promised we'd always be equals. But all I saw was ambition, sharp and ruthless. "You think you can just erase me?" I whispered. Ryan stood, gathering his papers, towering over me. "Not erase. Transition. The company needs a leader, not a backseat driver. You're good, don't get me wrong, but you don't command a room like I do. People trust me." "So what am I then?" I asked, voice low. He shrugged. "The brains. The workhorse. Every empire needs one." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me, and the cruelest. That night, I walked home through the city streets, the neon lights blurring through tears I refused to let fall. Ryan wasn't just cutting me out of meetings. He was rewriting history, turning my contributions into footnotes. And if I didn't fight back, soon I'd be nothing more than a ghost in the company I created. The cracks were no longer in the foundation. They were in my heart. If your closest friend told you the company was more theirs than yours, would you walk away or prepare for war? The night after Ryan's words, "Maybe it was always more mine than yours," I barely slept. His voice echoed in my head like a broken record, each repetition cutting deeper than the last. But somewhere in the sleepless hours, a fire sparked. I realized something. Ryan thrived on perception, on being the loudest voice in the room, on standing in the spotlight while others worked behind the scenes. He believed he could silence me simply by ignoring me. That was his mistake. Because real power isn't about volume, it's about proof. The next morning, I sat at my desk with a blank notebook. For hours, I wrote timelines, financials, development logs, email threads, every idea, every milestone, every breakthrough that had shaped the company. And next to each, I scribbled one truth. My name was on it. I wasn't just a silent partner, I was the architect. And I was done letting Ryan pretend otherwise. But I couldn't confront him head on. Not yet. If I stormed in with accusations, he'd spin it, twist my words, make me look unstable. He was too good at playing the golden boy. No, I needed something stronger than words. I needed evidence. That's when I started pulling strings, quietly. I reached out to Amelia, our head of HR. She'd been with us from the start, and though she admired Ryan, she respected me. I asked her casually if she could send me old hiring records for a project I'm working on. She didn't question it. Within hours, I had files showing who had really recruited our top talent. Spoiler, it wasn't Ryan. Next, I dug through archived Slack messages, email chains, and project notes. Nights turned into early mornings as I combed through thousands of conversations, my eyes burning, but my determination sharper than ever. And with every screenshot saved, with every memo filed, I felt my strength returning. Ryan wanted to paint me as the backseat driver, but I was building my arsenal, a collection of undeniable truths that no smirk, no spin, no charm could erase. Still, I couldn't do this alone. I needed allies. So I began reaching out. Quiet coffees with old colleagues, late-night phone calls with developers who'd moved on, even a lunch with one of our original investors. I asked subtle questions, jogged memories, reminded them of my role. Some had forgotten, some hadn't. but almost all of them admitted they knew how much of the company's DNA came from me. The picture was forming, and as I pieced it together, something shifted inside me. I was no longer just the betrayed friend, the sidelined co-founder. I was preparing for war, not the kind fought with shouting matches or boardroom theatrics, but with receipts, facts, and the truth. Because if Ryan wanted to erase me, he'd have to do more than rewrite history. He'd have to fight against it. And history, I was learning, is stubborn. When someone underestimates you and tries to erase your contributions, is silence the smarter weapon? Or should you strike back immediately? By the time Ryan announced the strategic realignment meeting, I was ready. He thought I was still in shock, still licking my wounds from being sidelined. He thought he had broken me, and that was exactly what I wanted him to believe. The meeting was scheduled for Monday in our sleek, glass-walled boardroom, with all senior staff and investors invited. Ryan loved theatrics. He thrived on grand gestures, and I knew this was his moment to crown himself sole king of the empire we had built together. But while he prepared his speech, I prepared my trap. All weekend I rehearsed. I gathered my notes, my evidence, my carefully built arsenal of truth, screenshots, emails, contracts, testimonies, even old prototypes stamped with my name. Proof that I was not only co-founder, but the backbone of the company. Still, it wasn't enough to just say it. I needed Ryan to reveal himself. I needed the mask to slip in front of everyone. So I baited him. On Sunday night, I sent him a message. Looking forward to your announcement tomorrow. I'm curious to see how you frame our journey. It was polite, supportive, exactly what he wanted to hear, and it worked. Within minutes, he replied, "Don't worry, I'll give you credit where it's due." I stared at those words for a long time, a slow smile spreading across my face. He didn't even realize he was already digging his own grave. The boardroom buzzed with anticipation the next morning. Investors in tailored suits, department heads with their tablets, even some early employees invited to celebrate the milestone. Ryan stood at the head of the long table, grinning like a showman about to take the stage. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice smooth, confident. "Today marks the beginning of a new era for our company." The word was deliberate, pointed. He spoke like a politician, recounting the history of the business. Except in his version, he was the visionary, the relentless leader, the man who carried us forward. My name appeared only in passing, like a footnote. The room nodded along, charmed as always. And then he said it. "From this day forward, I'll be taking full leadership of the company as the sole founder and CEO." Gasps rippled around the table. He hadn't warned them he'd cut me out completely. That was his mistake. I rose slowly from my chair. "Sole founder?" I asked, my voice steady, calm. "That's interesting. Because I seem to recall building this company with you, not for you." Ryan smirked, exactly as I knew he would. "Of course, Emma. You helped, but every company has its passengers and its drivers, and we both know who was driving Click." The projector behind me lit up, on the screen, a timeline of our company's milestones, each marked with emails, patents, and documents bearing my name. One after another, undeniable proof of my role. The room fell silent, and for the first time, I saw it. A flicker of panic in Ryan's eyes. The trap had sprung. If you caught someone lying about you in front of everyone, would you expose them immediately or let them dig their own grave first? The silence after the projector clicked was deafening. On the screen, my contributions glowed in sharp black and white, prototype sketches in my handwriting, emails where I secured our first investors, legal documents with my signature right beside Ryan's. It was irrefutable. The faces around the table told the story better than words could. Investors frowned. Department heads exchanged startled glances. A few employees leaned forward, eyes wide, as if seeing the company's history for the first time. Ryan's smirk faltered, but only for a second. Then he plastered on a laugh, as if this was nothing more than a misunderstanding. "Come on, Emma," he said smoothly. "We both know those early documents don't reflect reality. Everyone here knows who's been leading." I tilted my head, keeping my voice calm. "Is that so? Then perhaps they'd like to see the financial record showing whose signature authorized the first product shipment. Or maybe the investor correspondence where you copied my proposals word for word." A murmur ran through the room. One of the board members, a sharp-eyed woman named Karen, spoke up. "Ryan, I wasn't aware Emma had this level of involvement. Why was this never disclosed?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "Because it's not relevant anymore. What matters is the present. I've been carrying the weight of this company while Emma what?" I cut in, my voice firm now. "While I developed the product you're selling? While I secured the patent that keeps our competitors at bay? While I worked 80-hour weeks to ensure we didn't collapse during our first funding round?" His jaw clenched. The cracks were showing. I stepped closer to the screen, flipping to the next slide. A set of emails appeared. His emails. Ones where he had quietly tried to rewrite history, describing himself as the sole founder to outside partners. I'd spent weeks gathering them, quietly biding my time. Gasps filled the room again. "Ryan, is this true?" Karen demanded. For the first time, Ryan's charm failed him. It's a matter of branding," he stammered. "Investors like clarity. Too many founders complicate the narrative. That's not branding," I shot back. "That's erasure." The room buzzed louder now, voices overlapping. Some defending me, others questioning Ryan. The tide was turning, and he knew it. "Enough," Ryan slammed his hand on the table. "This is my company, and I won't let you." "Your company?" I interrupted, locking eyes with him. "Or ours?" The weight of that word, ours, hung heavy in the air. Everyone in that room understood the difference. Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked around, searching for support, but all he found were skeptical stares. For years, he had been the golden boy, the visionary, the one people followed without question. But now, the illusion was cracking, and for the first time, he wasn't untouchable. If you were in Emma's shoes, would you confront Ryan with hard evidence immediately or wait until he embarrassed himself first? The meeting adjourned in chaos, but Ryan wasn't finished with me. Later that evening, as I packed up my laptop, I heard his voice behind me. Low, sharp, venomous. You think you've won, don't you? I turned slowly. Ryan stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, his face tight with fury. His polished mask had slipped, and what remained was raw anger. I didn't think anything, I said evenly. I just showed the truth. He laughed bitterly. Truth? You don't understand the game, Emma. No one cares about old sketches or signatures. They care about who's in control now. And that's me. Not for long, I said, sliding my laptop into my bag. That's when he stepped closer, lowering his voice. Careful. You think the board will side with you? They don't want a war. They'll choose stability. And stability means me. You're expendable. The word stung, but I didn't let him see it. Funny. That's what you said about our first product, the one I designed. Without that, we'd be nothing. His jaw tightened. You should have stayed in your lane. You were good at ideas, Emma. But companies aren't built on ideas. They're built on power. And I hold it. I stood, meeting his gaze head on. Power isn't taken, Ryan. It's given. And today, for the first time, they saw who really deserves it. He sneered, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Still, Ryan wasn't the type to retreat. Within days, his counterattack began. Emails circulated from his office, subtly discrediting me. He painted me as emotional, difficult, and unreliable. He pulled in allies, whispering that my accusations came from jealousy, that I couldn't handle playing second fiddle. But he didn't stop there. At the next investor call, he tried to cut me off entirely. Emma's role has been exaggerated, he said smoothly, as though we hadn't just seen hard evidence to the contrary. I've always supported her input, but the truth is, she lacks the temperament to lead. I sat quietly, letting him dig deeper. Because what Ryan didn't realize was that I had anticipated this. I had already spoken with Karen and several board members. I had shown them not just the history, but the present. Ryan's shady financial moves, his self-serving decisions, even contracts he had tried to sign without authorization. So when one of the investors, a stern man named David, interrupted him, it was like a hammer dropping. Ryan, David said coldly, we've reviewed Emma's evidence. And frankly, your behavior raises serious concerns. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ryan looked at me, panic flashing behind his eyes for just a moment. Then he forced another laugh, but it rang hollow. The empire we had built together was beginning to shift beneath his feet. And this time, I wasn't going to let him drag me down with him. If you were Ryan, would you keep fighting to hold control or step down before losing everything? The boardroom felt colder than usual the morning of the emergency meeting. The blinds were drawn, the air heavy with tension, and the long mahogany table gleamed under the harsh overhead lights. Everyone knew today would decide the future of the company. Ryan sat at the head of the table as if it still belonged to him, his shoulders squared, his jaw clenched. He looked powerful, but I could see the cracks, his fingers tapping nervously against the wood, the sheen of sweat along his hairline. Let's get this over with, he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. David, the investor who had challenged him before, cleared his throat. Ryan, these accusations are serious. Misusing company funds, altering contracts, misrepresenting Emma's role. If proven, they warrant removal. Ryan forced a smile. Accusations are just that. Emma is bitter because she was never cut out for leadership. She doesn't have the vision. I leaned forward, sliding a thick folder across the table. Then explain this. Inside were copies of wire transfers, money funneled into a side company Ryan had created without board approval. Evidence that he had tried to profit personally at the expense of the business we built. The room erupted in whispers. Karen's eyes widened. David raised his brows. Ryan's face drained of color. This is out of context. No, I said firmly. This is betrayal. Not just of me, but of every investor, every employee who trusted you. For the first time, Ryan faltered. His voice wavered. You don't understand the pressure I was under. I kept us alive. By stealing? I shot back. By erasing the very person who built this with you? You didn't keep us alive, Ryan. You almost destroyed us. The silence that followed was deafening. Then David spoke again, his voice final. It's clear. Ryan, the board is voting today on your removal as CEO. Ryan shot to his feet, slamming his fists on the table. You can't do this. This company is mine. His words echoed, but they sounded hollow, desperate. I stood too, my voice calm but steady. No, Ryan. It was ours. And you forgot that the vote was swift, decisive. One by one, hands rose in favor of removing him. Even Karen, his most loyal ally, lowered her eyes and raised her hand. When the last vote was counted, Ryan looked around the room in disbelief, his empire crumbling in front of him. You'll regret this, he muttered, his voice breaking. All of you. But no one answered. Security escorted him out, his footsteps echoing down the hall like the closing of a chapter. I sat back down, my hands trembling under the table. Relief washed over me, but so did sorrow. Ryan had been my friend, my partner. We had built something extraordinary together, but greed had destroyed him, and now I had to decide what kind of leader I would become without him. Do you think Emma did the right thing exposing Ryan? Or should she have tried to forgive him for their friendship's sake? The boardroom was quiet after Ryan's departure, but the silence felt different now. It wasn't heavy with fear or tension. It was full of possibility. For the first time in months, I could breathe. David turned to me with a steady gaze. Emma, the company needs a leader who can restore trust. Someone who remembers why this business was built in the first place. That someone is you. The words sank in slowly. Me, the CEO. It was what I had worked for, what I had earned, yet I felt the weight of it pressing down. This wasn't just about titles or power. It was about responsibility. I nodded. Then let's rebuild. Together the board voted, unanimously this time, to appoint me as the new CEO. A round of applause followed, warm and genuine, and for once I didn't feel invisible. I wasn't the silent partner in Ryan's shadow anymore. I was the one leading us forward. That evening, I walked through the office alone, letting the reality settle in. The walls still carried echoes of our beginnings, late nights, laughter, dreams sketched on whiteboards. Ryan's presence haunted every corner, but instead of bitterness, I felt something else. Closure. I stopped by the large window overlooking the city. The skyline glowed with possibility, lights twinkling against the dark sky. I whispered to myself, we made it. Not he, not I, we. Because no matter how the story had turned, the company had been built on both our shoulders. But the future belonged to those who stayed true. Weeks passed, and slowly the wounds healed. Employees who had been shaken by the scandal found their confidence again. Investors returned, reassured by transparency and stability. We launched new projects, bold, creative, the kind Ryan would have dismissed as too risky. They thrived because they carried the heart we had once shared. At the office celebration of our first major post-Ryan success, laughter filled the air again. Glasses clinked. Smiles felt real. Karen approached me quietly. Emma, I'm sorry. I should have seen what he was doing. I should have stood by you sooner. I gave her a small smile. What matters is you're here now. We all are. Because betrayal had fractured us, but resilience had rebuilt us. Late one night, I sat at my desk looking over our progress. A framed photo caught my eye, me and Ryan in the early days, standing outside our first tiny office, grinning like kids with the world ahead of us. I didn't hate him. I pitied him. Because Ryan had never understood the truth. Power without trust is an illusion. Control without loyalty is temporary. I set the photo face down and turned back to my work. The company was mine to lead now, not through deceit or manipulation, but through vision, honesty, and the courage to stand my ground. This wasn't just survival, it was a new dawn. And this time, I wasn't just part of the story. I was writing it. Do you believe betrayal makes people stronger in the long run, or does it always leave scars?